Growing up, I wanted to be a medic. I didn't even think I'd end up in tech. So you'd find me walking around with a stethoscope or you're walking around with scalpels. An African mother, if you have a scalpel, they automatically think you're going to tear down seeds and everything. So that automatically led to being disciplined.
And I know everyone is talking about this AI. How should she like approach AI?
Think of it as an assistant. You can use it to leverage for you to be able to want to work more efficiently. You need to still have a human aspect because at the end of the day, you're building for consumers who are real human beings. And I used to work very fast. So she'd wonder, how is this person able to do these things very fast? Probably kuna makosa mahali. They come check, they find, okay, nothing is wrong. Add probably 0.2, you add 0.2. Then they look at it, they're like, no, whatever you had done initially is okay, so revert back. Really? You apply for your first gig and it's successful. So it was an American company, and what I was doing for them majorly was things to do with accessibility design.
Before it was the money. At this point, what was your most challenging moment?
So the most challenging moment of thing now with more money is now how to manage that money. Money is a spirit, right? So
A spirit?
yes, money is a spirit.
Interesting.
Meaning you can control it or you can let it control you.
You can call it.
Yeah, you can call it like literally. It's like the same way if you have a pet and you've trained it. If you call them, they know this is my name, so they'll respond to it. I think I'd say for anyone who's building their career, one, try and specialize on one thing that basically you're really good at. Collaborate. So you have an idea, I have an idea. If you work together, then we'll have something better. Of course, they never tell you the full amount that the client is paying them,
yeah.
but whatever they're giving you is sufficient enough for you to be able to do rather run and live your life comfortably.
Sufficient, Nini. What is sufficient?
$4,000. Yeah.
Scott,
What's up?
how are you?
I'm fine. I'm alive.
You're alive.
Yeah.
How are you feeling in this moment?
How am I feeling? I'm composed, calm, relaxed.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the viewers, who is John Scott?
So interestingly, so John Scott is a human being, one, of course. Then he's known for a number of things, but majorly or professionally, he's a techie, specifically a designer. Yeah, so I like to say in Swahili meaning to mkono, because ideally I work in the background to ensure that everything is okay in terms of designs and interfaces. They now do handoffs now to the devs. So that's basically him in a nutshell.
Okay. So Scott, I know a bit about you. And you seem to be the person, like you said, Tom Connor, the person who's behind the scenes, trying to make sure everything looks good, is good. So where does that come from? Like, where does that come from your upbringing that you feel like you need to ensure it's good for everyone, but you stay behind?
Oh, interesting question. Well, I think it stems from ideally the upbringing from my young age, especially now. I think now that you've asked that, I've thought about it majorly from my mom. Yeah, she's the disciplinarian in the family. So even growing up, she was those people who would tell you like XYZ needs to be done. It needs to be done at a particular time in a certain way. Then having to see the same through probably uncles and aunts. So you tend to pick up a lot of these things. So ideally, I'd say it's what has led to ideally growing up faster than essentially what you'd say in other kids or other my peers as well. So yeah, so that's where it essentially comes from. So giving a hand here, doing XYZ, ensuring everything is okay, everyone is at peace, people are ideally comfortable. So yeah.
Okay. So, Scott, I would peg you as successful for your age. I know people don't like being told different. They're like, no, I'm not successful, but I would. And what do you think it is about you that has brought about the success you've garnered, especially at your young age?
Interesting. Well, I think it's what people like to say, what being serious ideally, but just being serious. So you'd find like you have your normal resting face, and people think like this guy just looks too serious, or he knows what he's doing. I mean, ideally, it's basically how you carry yourself. Personally, for myself, I'd say it's how I've interacted with not just my peers, but also my subordinates, both junior and senior to me. Yeah. So ideally, from all that's across all fields. So just being able to ensure them that you can actually be able to do what you need to do and more is essentially what has led to that success. Yeah.
And most of like successful people always say, I knew I would. I knew I'd do well. Did you feel the same way growing up?
Absolutely not. I'd say I like to say I live one day at a time. One at a time, meaning, of course, you think about your future, what you'd want to be, what you'd want to do. But then again, from a psychological standpoint, you tend to see that it piles a lot of pressure. Other people put a lot of pressure on themselves, aside from the external pressure, probably from people who are looking up to them or their folks and siblings. But yeah, living a day at a time, I didn't think or ever thought I'd be like successful. Then again, success is measured in different ways. It depends on different people, different calibers. Yeah. So for me, it's just being able to live that one day at a time, tackle what is there, then now move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want us to talk about the first time you met tech, like your first meeting with tech. When was that?
Wow, that probably has to be 2002 or 2003, if I'm actually correct. Yeah, I remember the time we used to live in Langata. So growing up in Langata, the compound we lived in had like 3 or 4 houses. Um, so I remember the what ideally people call the servants' quarter. There's a younger cousin of mine who used to live there. So the dad lived in the States at the time. So every time he'd like ship or send things home, you'd find like sophisticated gadgets. For that time, it was sophisticated. So these weird games where you can be able to kind of sketch and then now kind of move it to the left, then it erases. When you move it to this other side, it was more or less like a stencil, ideally. So yeah, I think that's the first time I ideally interacted with tech in as the simplest form. Yeah, at that point. Yeah.
Were you always a creative kid? Like, because I know from where you are, the dots connect to how you were as a kid. Were you always creative, artistic?
Yes, I'd say I've always been artistic. Reason being, I remember, I think when I was in nursery, uh, we used to have, I mean, nursery mainly you're taught about how to play shapes and everything. But every time there will be an assignment in regards to shapes or craft, you'd find that I'd have like something which is more complex than what other kids have essentially done. So that's how I actually started my journey in what people call art, and now it's morphed into design. Yeah. So it started from that simple step of doing assignment, cutting, doing the cutouts and whatnot. Yeah.
And did you nurture it? Or, some people are actually quite gifted. They draw, but I used to draw, but I like let go. Did you intentionally nurture it?
I can say yes and no. When you're growing up, rather as you're growing up, you trained to experiment with different things. So there are times I do like portraits, just sketch, leave them halfway, go see what someone else is doing. But then again, now that you've mentioned it again, I've remembered that we have a few artists in the family actually. One of my uncles used to be a graphic designer at KIE, Kenya Institute of Education. I think he still works there, I'm not sure. So yeah, he'd do proper portraits, paint and everything. So every time you'd find him with a brush or canvas just sticking around, you'd wonder what is this guy doing? It looks interesting. It's playing with paints, but see, as a kid, first just playing with paint, but you try to probably mimic what he's doing. So I think part of it came from also learning and seeing what he was doing. Yeah.
Okay. So I know most of us start thinking about what we want to be in high school. So take us through that journey of discovering this is what I want to do and I'm going to follow it.
So interestingly, growing up, I wanted to be a medic. Ideally, I didn't even think I'd end up in tech. I wanted to be a medic. So you'd find me, because we have medics in the family, so you'd find me walking around with a stethoscope or you're walking around with scalpels, just cutting things. But of course, by virtue of having an African mother, if you have a scalpel, they automatically think you're going to tear down seats and everything. So that automatically led to being disciplined. So go there, unatandikwa, a good one. So you find like umeachana nayo. So over a period of time now, with now this now picture it, there are these assignments you're doing at school which involve a lot of art. There's these gadgets that your uncle from the States is sending back home. So you start just playing around with things, sketching, even on the ground, the soil, because those days used to play like in playgrounds and typically there wasn't grass. So you sketch things, you leave them there. At that time, you don't even know, like you don't have a camera or anything. So you just sketch something, you come tomorrow, you find someone has added something onto it. But now by the aspect of visualizing, because you see, then again, it stands for from different things. So someone will draw something like a square, but if you tilt it, it looks ideally like a diamond or a prism, depending on how you look at it. So yeah.
Okay. So you wanted to be a medic, but then you slowly
morphed into that. So how I ended up in essentially what we call product design now is by doing graphics. I continued doing the sketches, presenting it to my parents, people in school. So even when we had like events or those functions at school, so we'd be told, XYZ, come, we need to do probably a chat that will present to the guests. So I'd always find like my chat was always probably the second or the third one, because of course the people who are much better, but you'd actually see it from that. So now from then on, even transitioning now into high school, weirdly I did pursue art in high school. I went more on now the tech side, but I still maintained doing the graphics. So in high school, you'd find like people used to do funkies and whatnot. Someone tells you, we need something like a poster. Back then, you're using, what was this, Microsoft, was it Word Art or something? So you're just sketching things there with pencils. So essentially you're giving a sketch. You don't know any tools at that time because I hadn't been exposed to Photoshop and the likes by then. So all you do is like sketch it on paper, do something ideally in high school called calligraphy. So you do calligraphy for people and whatnot. Then someone comes, probably takes a photo, or you send it like probably to a teacher or duty. Then now you find it to go on notice board. So now after now doing the computer bit in high school, then now you expose like, oh, there are tools I can be able to use to manipulate this. So you move now from physical art to digital art. Yeah, so ideally I started out as a graphic designer. Yeah.
So when ndio ulikuwa unatufanyia calligraph kwa hizo barua zetu?
Mimi nilikuwa nafanyia calligraphy, but also I think part of it is because by virtue of course, being in school over a period of time, I had a very interesting handwriting. Interesting in the sense whereby if I was to show you a notebook, or rather how my handwriting looks like, people think it's a lady's handwriting because ladies are perceived to be neat and whatnot. You know, for guys, they assume, anaandika tu kama we just sketch like a big. Yeah, as long as you've written something. But my handwriting was more or less like a lady's. And how I picked that up was, of course, upbringing in school, how you're taught how to write, hold a pen. But then again, I had older sisters. So you'd go look at their books, see how their handwriting was like, okay, this is neat, it's legible, look at the book. So try and mimic that as well. So with that now, incorporating that into now the graphics and the art made it very easy for me, because now people will be able to tell essentially what we're calling information architecture now. This text is moving from this side to this side. This is what it's trying to communicate. So it's easy for them to consume that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question because this question based also on your background in psychology, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So with different fields in tech, you, based on your brain and how you are wired, you're more likely to pick up different skills easier.
Yeah.
So like product design, I can see you're very organized, you're very artistic. What other skills would you say make a good product designer? Like what things who is this person? An organized person, very artistic. Who else? Like what else?
I like to say ideally, even for like product design, I feel, or rather how I think of it is like art is the least form of knowledge that one requires actually when you're doing product design.
Wow.
Yeah, it's more of being one, organized, two, understanding what you need to do, and three, the person you're trying to communicate to. So ideally you need to understand the other person on the other end, essentially what we call the consumer, as opposed to essentially what you do. I like to tell some of my colleagues that I work with, for designers, you will design something for you, it looks really good, it looks very nice, but someone else looking at it will be like, hey, did this guy think about what he was doing? It just did because it looked good to them. So you need to understand the other person. So it's more the connection, and now, as you put it now, the psychological bit, being able to understand what they want to see and now give them what they want. Yeah, so from giving them what they want, then now you're able to get more information, because they'll tell you, you've given me XYZ, are we able to add ABC? So now you continue to kind of morph it and do essentially what you call iterations to give them the best that they can have.
So empathy is also great.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So now in school you've discovered that this is something I could play with. So you're going to campus. You choose your course based on, take us through that journey.
So interesting how I came up to choose my course, because now in high school you've done computers, you've interacted with them to a certain level, you're able to write, like we used to do Visual Basic back then. So able to write, to rather manipulate some form of code. So like, oh, this is interesting. By then, of course, cell phones were out. So you're basically like the tech guru in the family. So if something is broken there, they're like, unajenga vitu za computers, so come fix this XYZ. What African parents like to say, uni mtu wa computers. So they assume once you studied anything to do with computers or interacted with them, you can do everything electronic, mechanical is something you can do. Print everything. But ideally now for me, it was interesting because, of course, during holidays, you'd go sit at home. But then we had been exposed to now computers. We had like a laptop at home and like a computer. We used to play games. So able to do different things by virtue of being able to play around with, the different electronics around the house. So I became good at several things. As you're saying, the print, you can be able to tune this and something works, the TV and whatnot. So all these things collectively now, as you're moving now to campus, I was like, I'm sure I'm going to do a major in computer science. Yeah. So then ideally I was supposed to join JQuat. But
Chuja.
no. Actually, JQuat Karen.
Period.
So it's like, so I was seated, I've done my selection, because of course my first option, there was UM, there was JQuat, because I knew those were some of the best universities offering that course at the time. So as I'm seated, some random day, my dad just texts me, because at the time he was living outside the country. He's like, I've seen you've selected how to go to JQuat. Have they sent you like a pro forma or those admission forms for you to? So as I was just about to do the submission, so you fill the form, you want to like go take it, because back then we used to take it like physically. You have to go see the registrar, tell them this is what I have. It's like, have you checked this? I've heard of this. I'm like, for me, what I knew about this at the time is this is good at communications. I'm not going to do anything to do with communication. He's like, just go and try it and see how it's like. I was like, okay, fine. At that time, you're still listening to your folks. You haven't become rebellious, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are supporting you. Yeah. So I ended up going to Daystar, like now the Nairobi campus.
Okay.
Picked forms, just fill them and sent them. So I ended up not sending my application to JQuat. So less than a week later, I received like a letter of confirmation, like, yeah, we'd be happy to admit you at Daystar, blah, blah, blah. Come and join. So I started doing research on Daystar. I saw they had computer science. Then considering it was a private chain, I was like, oh, they're fine. Let's go and see what's in store. Okay. Yeah, so joining Daystar, I met a couple of people, but then I registered for computer science. Okay. Did it for 4 years. But now, of course, in campus, it's like a cycle. So you learn different things. You'll do networking, you'll do programming, you'll do things to do with information. Like it's wholesome. Especially campus was wholesome for me. So by the time I was getting to second year, I knew I was actually going to do graphics. I was like, I'd still be able to write code. Like I can still be able to write code, but I was like, I think I'm leaning more towards now the art side or graphic side. Reason being, in campus now, there are different clubs, different societies. So all these people have events almost every other week. You'll hear XYZ. And at the time, we only had, I think, one graphic designer in campus. Just one person.
The whole campus.
Yeah. He only had one graphic designer. Okay, so most people would come to him. If he's busy, then they had to outsource someone else. So you'd find they have to probably look for someone outside the school to do for them. And of course, someone outside will charge them more expensive. So we used to have a lab, we called it data. It's for data information. It's like a center. So we had like a small room with partitions where people would come experiment on different things and whatnot. So on some random day, I was just sitting there playing around with graphics because by then I had gotten probably one or two clients who needed simple things like PowerPoints and whatnot. So he's like, I've seen you doing graphics and I've heard about you from somewhere. There's a lot, or rather, there are so many clients in this campus alone. Do what is like specialize in what it is you're doing currently. Because he was about to transition and leave campus and he was about to graduate. He was like, do it. If you need any assistance, I will show you how to navigate all these things. Then you can take all these clients. Because ideally, I am leaving. And even after he left, people are still looking for him anyway because his creations were good. So you'd go around campus, see a poster, then he had like a small personal branding logo. So you'd see it written BC. So you'd wonder who's this BC. So when the day, like when he approached me, I was like, this is Photoshop, this is Illustrator, you can do XYZ on this. I was like, yeah, I've heard of them, but I didn't know you can do so many things on that. So that's how I ended up now starting to move my graphics from now physical and pencil or rather sketch art out to digital art. Yeah.
So throughout campus, you are practicing. You are creating designs for people. You're making money.
Well, money is in as much or in as little as it was. Yes, I was now starting to make money. So like again, the concept of getting money. Of course, on the side, people will come install for me XYZ and whatnot. So you charge them probably 1,000 bob or 2,000 bob. But see, in campus, that means that is extra income. Yeah. So we used to call it, rather, I used to call it ignorance fee. So someone knows they can get a software from a certain place, but because they're too lazy, they'll come to you to tell you to install it for them. So you charge them an ignorance fee. So if the base price was 1,000 bob, you charge them an extra 1,000 bob. So they pay you 2,000. So the year 1,000 bob is called ignorance fee because literally you know where to get it. But since you've come, it's fine, I'll do it for you. Then now you're charging for time. So you see with that now you're starting to know the concept of probably how to handle clients.
Yeah.
You tell this client, it's a 5-minute job and they come after 1 hour. So you're able now to manage expectations as time goes. So you finish within 5 minutes, okay? Within that 1 hour, probably 2-3 other clients will come in. So at the end of the day, you find you've made probably 4K or 5K. But of course, it's not that frequent. Someone will come probably once a semester or twice a semester, you'd find. So with that now, combining that together, now doing posters and presentations for people for their projects, you find that now you're starting to make money.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I'm a victim of ignorance for sure. So then you finish campus.
Yeah, then I finished campus. So by the time I was finishing campus, I had a good grasp of these tools that essentially you need to manipulate. And I was very sure whatever I'm going to do be in line with graphics or basically just design in general. Yeah, because now for design, essentially at that point, it wasn't just graphical only. There was also bits of it which entailed fashion.
Fashion.
Yeah. And how that came up, yeah.
Okay.
I know it looks like a rabbit hole. How that came up by virtue of having an African mother. They're so into this African prints and kitenge, which like yours looks really lovely.
Thank you.
So you're able to tell different prints, how they've matched the colors and whatnot. So it also embed that now from what it is as a print or what you're looking at as a fabric now to the digital side. So combining all these things, design like in general. Yeah, so we finished campus. Before I finished campus, I did my I don't have to call it. It was actually a job. It wasn't an internship. I did worked at Choir.
Yeah.
So in Choir, I joined as a marketing graphics designer. So marketing graphics designer means you do posters, you design billboards for them when they're doing marketing for intakes and whatnot, their flyers, all these things. So you just give them data and you give it like a database of photos. So it's for you to choose the best photos in line with the information you're giving them. Then it has to go through approval. And once it's been approved, then now it goes to print. So you see now already you're part of the full process from the designing to the print. So you have to ensure you have contacts of the printers so that you talk to them, ensure the print is done on time. If there are 1,000 copies, you'll have to ensure there are 1,000 copies. So you have to count all of them because they're paying for them. So I worked at Choir for about 3 months. I transitioned from Choir because I think the line manager I had at the time was a troublesome one. I'd like to put it that way. Yeah.
Why?
Reason being, she was Olivia. So she was more in line with marketing than the graphical part of it. So you see, for them as a marketer, they're looking at the language that they're putting out to the consumer. So this has to be XYZ, make it big. You know, those clients always make the logo big. That was the why. How will they know this maroon? Is it our color code? I'm like, this is the color code. I'm usually just copy pasted it. It's there. Then I used to work very fast. So she'd wonder, how is this person able to do all these things very fast? Probably kuna makosa mahali. So she was more or less trying to micromanage. Yeah. So they come check, they find, okay, nothing is wrong. This size in kind of add probably 0.2, you add 0.2. Then they look at it, they're like, no, whatever you had done initially is okay, so revert back. Yeah, so that's how you end up hearing designers have final one, final two, final 2.2, final. So that was the kind of thing. So after 3 months, I think I had gotten what I needed from there and I had given them the best I could. So then I left.
Then, okay.
Yeah. So after leaving, I think I stayed like 1 year without like permanent employment, let's put it that way. So I still had my own small clients, and gigs. So you'd find someone who has an event or they want a website designed. Now you started. So you see now I've moved from marketing. I've started now doing product. Or someone needs a website to be designed. So they want to see how the layout would look like, the information and anything. So ideally you'd put this for them now, ideally that type on Photoshop. So you tell them you'll have this as the head or a hero, whatnot. This is how the information will look. So at this time, you're already playing around with more layouts, but more advanced layouts, as opposed to like for a poster, because you just put a logo here, call to action, the image is here and done. But now this is more information that needs to be put outside for a consumer. So I did that for about an year. Of course, the clients weren't many of the repeat clients, but virtue of doing a good job for them, you'd get more referrals. So ideally, at that time, I was still living with my folks. So whatever you're getting is just extra money, supplements, for you to do XYZ things. Then
At this point, do you know about product design?
at that time, I've read about it because remember then even in campus, for your final project, you do like an application.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so how now I got now to get to learn or rather study more about product is you'd see for developers, they do very good functionalities for applications, but now it's not structured. Like you just see if you want a calculator, it's 1+1, but now one kuju plus equapa, the equal sign is on this other side. So it's very hard for you to kind of consume it. So that's how I now started learning that, okay, these people have done functionality, but this could look better in a way that someone can be able to consume or run the functionality in a way much more easy and efficient way for them. Yeah. So by then I've already started studying or rather learning more, digging more into product design and what it entails. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then you move to your next job. How do you get the next job after that 1 year? Were you applying to jobs?
So how do I get to the next job? Yeah, at that time I was applying to jobs, but not in an efficient way. You see, now you have ideally what people call portfolios now.
Yeah.
But with then you used to put it like in a folder. So you have a folder, then you'll have to send it to someone. So you've put your the best graphics that you've done before, so they're like 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 of them. then you put them in a folder and send it to someone. So how I got the next gig, there's a friend of mine who we used to do ministry with back in campus. I remember his name was Eric. So Eric was like, he used to do posters for people on XYZ. This company is looking for a graphics designer, and I think you'd be a good fit. So at that point, you're like, okay, what does this company do? XYZ, just trying to be again. They're like, I've worked here for like 6 months. It's a good company. And I was like, okay, it's a friend of mine who's recommended me, so it should be okay. So I tell my folks, so there's this person who's invited me for an interview. I'm going for it. Where's the company? It's in Westlands. What does it do? It does real estate. I was like, they're like, why do you go try your luck? If it's something that you like, pursue it. So I went for the interview. My interview, I remember, was exactly 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I walked in, went to the hiring manager's office. So got in, she just looked at me, was like, how much money do you want us to pay you? Was like, at that time you've already prepared. Oh, no, they'll ask you XYZ, tell me about yourself. So you're there armed with all the details. Akikuuliza XYZ, you're ready to ambush them. They're like, how much do you want us to pay you? I was like, hey. Hadn't thought about how much these guys need to pay me. Hadn't done research on how much graphic designers are paid. At that time, you don't even care about the deductions and everything. Because when I was in choir, these guys used to pay me like bahasha system. Like end month ikifika, they're like, you end up kwa payroll, they'll give you your salary, you go, like nothing is being deducted. So they had not come in contact with the whole notion. You'd hear people are being taxed, people are doing deduction. They're like, probably it's for adults or whatever. If maybe bad or still a child. So yeah, so I remember quoting for them and telling them to pay me 50K. So I just gave them a ballpark figure. I was like, so at the back of my head, I'm like, okay, probably you're quoting higher than probably what your value is or what they can afford. So just there crossing my fingers, because now the table was as you're crossing your fingers, hoping they'll say you're too expensive, so we'd go to for another candidate. So they're like, what we'll do, we'll start with 30K. Then if you're good, we'll do an appraisal. Then we can give you the 50K that you want. I was like, okay. So I kept quiet. I didn't give them a response then and there.
Okay.
So as I was leaving, because I'd see like little from, it was an open office space. So from HR, I'll see where my friend Eric is seated. So as I was leaving, Eric told me, I've already gotten word. They're actually going to hire you. So actually reporting to work on Monday. I remember it was on a Thursday. Like, you come to work on Monday. I was like, wow, okay. So I went back home. That time you're still shaking. Like, so now I'll be going to an actual office to work and like literally. So went back home. Of course, you give your folks the news and everything, whatnot. So my mom was like, for real, these guys have hired you. I'm like, yeah, they've hired me and I'll be going to work from Monday. So what do they dress me to dress officially?
Okay. How did they see your work? Is that why they didn't have to?
Yeah, because remember that time when Eric was referring me, he shared this folder, so they had gone through the folder, so they didn't even give me like a take-home test or like sit down and want to see how you can be able to manipulate this. No,
Okay.
like a straight go.
Okay, so this was at Rama or move on?
Yeah, that was
Rama.
Rama.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, that was Rama. I stayed there for about 6 to 8 months. Then there was a round of layoffs because now it was beginning to be like the onset of COVID. Yeah, so COVID had ideally set in. So, and the company wasn't doing well financially, but they weren't transparent enough to tell people. So there was this, like you'd hear people are leaving the company. Of course, they had those a high turnover because they had a lot of personnel in the sales teams. So you'll see someone come today, after 2 weeks they've gone and whatnot. Then now, that time now you're starting to learn how companies work, the company culture, the policies behind all these things. So you're already now forming perceptions of how companies are supposed to run, how you're supposed to handle different clients, cash flows and whatnot. So yeah, that happened, and now I was out of employment again.
So you were laid off at Rama.
Yes, you are laid off.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you take that?
Well, I had already planned in my head to resign ideally. Yeah, because the environment was not that conducive for anyone. So in terms of what your JD states, you'd find you're doing a lot of things outside your JD. They still want you to deliver that on top of what you're doing. So it was a bit bulky for me at the time. But you see now that you're able to learn and adjust how to run different things. And yeah, I think as we were saying before, I've also done production. So while at Tram, I also did production for them. Aside from now the graphics. So that's how I learned all these things. Yeah. So when we left Rama, that was I think in November or December, like around November of 2020. Was like, let me go back home. Of course, by then I had done a bit of saving. We already learned more about product design. There are a few other clients outside of Rama that you're doing product design for. So I was like, I think I'm done with this things of doing marketing, graphics, and whatnot. It was like, I'm done.
Okay. So you move back home.
No, at that time I was still living alone. Yeah, no, I already moved out of home. So I was like, then it's fine. I'll manage because I had done my savings and whatnot.
Okay.
Plus, at that time, of course, being a bachelor, your needs are pretty much dogo.
Okay. So you move from Rama. How do you get, how long does it take you to get your next role?
It takes me exactly, I think, 3 weeks.
How?
So,
Everyone is asking how.
how 3 weeks? Um, so I had this other friend, and I think again it still goes back to the social capital and how well you do your work so that you're able to get a referral. So there's a friend of mine whose dad is still a judge, I think at the High Court. So he was trying to set up his own company called Hover. So it was like essentially it's a branding company, not. It was like I'm not even going to look for at a high end what. Because in the way they're not making money, they're still trying to set up the company. It was like you come and pay whatever amount of money you want. Because anyway, you're the only graphic designer. I was like, are you serious? Like, yeah. So I, of course, by virtue of learning how companies are working and salaries and whatnot, I asked him, so how are you going to be able to pay me my salary if you're just like building up the company from scratch? He was like, you don't worry about it. We have formal contracts. It is written. I'd rather go without pay, but I will pay you because whatever the value you're going to give me will give me more clients and they'll bring in money. Like, okay. So I started now, essentially, that was ideally like my first, okay, actually, my second full time consultancy. Yeah. So I was a consultant at Hover.
Over. All right. So that's through a referral as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Interesting. Then after Hover.
So after Hover, I stayed in Hover for a while because, of course, now I'd do it like it's more or less like a part-time job because you're doing consultancy, right? So after Hover, then now I've met different groups of friends from different settings. Like you'd go probably do your outdoor sports. You meet someone XYZ friends from campus who now ventured into development, have joined other companies which are looking for guys to do design for both spheres, both graphic and now product. So that is how I ended up applying to join Andela. So I did my first application. It was rejected actually. Of course, because of the number of years of experience they're looking for. Like I applied for a senior role, but for them the level of experience was not enough. The work was good, and that is essentially what like the feedback they had given me. So they're looking for someone who's done product, but mostly what I had done majorly was on the graphics side. Yeah, and what I had done for the consultants was not sufficient enough to prove that I can do product design. So I decided now to do different courses in between. So joined did different courses in product school, just be able to see how products are now able to be morphed. Remember, this time I've decided I'm done with graphic design, things to do with posters and marketing. I am done. I just want to now venture into this new thing called product. So on the second application, which was I think 6 months later, then I was accepted. That is how I joined Andela.
So you, at this point, you already knew how to use Figma. You had
Yeah, at
built
that
up.
point now I had, since I had decided, like made a decision, like I'm done with graphics. I just went full on into now product. So learning everything to do with product, how to interact with the different tools, what they do, the outcomes, like many things that now essentially make now UI UX, how people perceive the colors, the theories, information architecture, the layouts at Go now. By then, of course, I've interacted with different applications. So trying to mimic what they have and how they actually function. So I'd now decided, like now I'm to UI UX. Then it hadn't now been given like a general name as a product design. I decided now it's like UI UX, and that is where I settled.
So for someone who's also making the same decision as you, they've been a graphic designer and they want to transition to product design. You said you took courses. Would you encourage courses, or what would you encourage them to fasten their learning, or would it be a portfolio? How would you encourage them to?
Well, I like to say it's a mix of both, depending, because I mean, people have different levels of grasping knowledge. There are guys who would prefer to probably sit in a class and have them taught. There are guys who'd like just look at something and probably see, okay, this is how it works and go for it. So for me personally, how it was is like doing courses was really efficient for me, because now then you're able to do like probably 2 or 3 courses at the same time, and now kind of converge to a certain point where, okay, course A and B have much to give me the idea that I have about point C. So it was very easy and efficient for me for both. But then again, remember, I have done a bit of graphics, or rather, learned a bit of products from campus as well, because now you're doing computer science with those different units, you're able to learn that as well.
Okay. So did you have a portfolio when you were applying for? And
Yes, by the time I was applying for Adela, I had like a proper portfolio. Yeah, something that you'd look at and know that, okay, this person has built a product. Of course, most of them are from personal projects or things that you're just trying to try out and see how you can make them better. But they aren't like real, like I've worked for a company, this is the product I've built, what or rather I've designed. Mostly just personal projects.
okay.
Yeah,
So
and that really helped.
okay. What for someone who's been looking to join Andela, what are the things that increased your chances of landing that? Like, what did you do differently?
What did I do differently? Yeah, ideally, it's, as I said, it's about how you present yourself. How I presented my portfolio, I think, was one of the biggest wins. Then, of course, when you're joining Andela, you go through a series of interviews. So the person who was interviewing me, of course, was African, but from Nigeria. So from the interaction I had with them, even from the get-go, they were kind enough to tell me like where I was lacking, or rather what I needed to improve for me to go through the second round. So by the time I was finishing the first round, so as they're telling you, or rather giving you that feedback, you essentially noting it down and starting to edit almost immediately, because they're telling you have essentially like 6 hours to 24 hours to submit this so that you actually move to the second round, because it's a time crunch. I was like, okay, fine. So you work on that, submit it, go to the second round and proceed. Yeah.
Right. So, for just you'll share with us some of the courses that you did, because I'm sure people would be curious to know what other courses. So at this point, you've joined and you've like been accepted into Andela, and now I would imagine, of course, your salary is significantly higher. Yeah. Tell us about that. What was that like? Just seeing, oh my God, is this the offer? Did you know that Andela pays that well?
So yeah, you've gotten this offer at Adela, you apply for your first gig and it's successful. So it was an American company, and what I was doing for them majorly was things to do with accessibility design. Something that was, I wouldn't say it was way off my scope, but it's something I had a lot of interest in. So accessibility design is basically designing for people who are enabled differently. So people with visual impairments, auditory impairments, such people. So there are ways you can incorporate this in your design so that they also feel included. And it's a very interesting field for anyone who's interested in probably pursuing it. It's fast growing actually, because many people also rather have been forced to kind of incorporate that for purposes of inclusivity. Yeah, so I've joined Andela, and ideally, what they do, you negotiate your salary depending on the gig that is there. So your hiring manager will tell you, so this is the gig. You have a team of probably 6 people, so this is the amount of money they'll pay you. Of course, they never tell you the full amount that the client is paying them, but whatever they're giving you is sufficient enough for you to be able to do rather run and live your life comfortably.
Sufficient ni nini? What it sounds me shame.
So, well, at the time for that first gig, I remember they paid me, it was $4,000. Yeah. So imagine you've moved from being paid like 60K, 100K. Now someone is paying $4,000, and it's those payments that are never delayed. So you're paid on time. There are essentially no deductions. Just to be honest, there are no deduction. So whatever they're paying you, your $4,000 is your take home. So it's for you to decide whether you want to pay your insurance, what you want to do with that money. It's up to you.
How did you feel when you got that offer letter?
Well, for them, for Andela, they don't give you an offer letter. What they do essentially, they just give you like a confirmation on email, like you applied for this, so you've been accepted. Then now you're added to the different channels where you're now able to meet the team and like given your scope of work. But even before that, as you're applying, you normally know the scope of work you're going to deal with, so that you know whether you want to apply or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
When they were giving you that number, that figure, did you think that, okay, my life has changed?
Well, to some extent, yes. But you see, then again, change is gradual. Because you see, you know, you're going to have this contract probably for a year or two, which is essentially renewable. But then again, there were cases before that where probably you started a project and the client pulls out. So if a client pulls out, that means essentially you as well will have to go back to apply for another role or another gig, for lack of a better word. So it wasn't essentially like instant change where you feel, they've given me this X amount of money, so I need to upgrade one or two things or four, five things. It's kind of a process. But of course, definitely there was a change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reflecting on your journey before Andela, when you were kind of struggling-ish, what would you say was your most challenging moment or time?
Most challenging moment of the time. Well, I'd say, of course, having interacted with money before and being able to know that there are times you can have it, there are times you can, like, literally have zero shillings to your name. The most challenging thing was basically just being able to navigate around like daily use, probably daily expenses. Because remember that time you're living alone, so you need to think about your rent. You need to think about your health insurance. In as much as you have probably NHIF, you need to take probably another cover. Because personally, like for myself, having grown up with things like asthma and allergies, you never know when a trigger will happen. Then the next minute you're like down. So those are basically what like the everyday thoughts that I'd essentially have. Yeah.
So it was primarily, the challenges were primarily around money.
Yes, primarily around money. Then two, of course, being outside of my job and having to compare separately with your peers who decided to take another, like a different field in tech. You feel like they're advancing way more, then you still like stagnant and something of the sort. So there's that inner pressure that you give yourself. But over time, with interacting with different people and being able to understand that it's a part of life, it's a process, then you start to become like more adaptable to it. Yeah.
Okay. So within Andela, your first project was Coachella, was it?
No, so Andela is the company I was working for was called Great Minds. It's in the United States. So Coachella is a different company that I work for. Because so remember, within Andela, you're working remotely, so you can work at whatever time. You have flexible time. So I decided to apply to Coachella. So Coachella is a Kenyan company. So you remember at that time you already have knowledge about money. So you know that if there's any money hitting your bank account and there are no deduction, ideally you become like a flag to, of course, the taxpayer. So I decided, well, let me be smart, because I'd also seen a few of my colleagues or other friends like being able to manage two jobs, because essentially from my scope of work I was like, okay, it's not a lot of work, so, and I still want to get extra income, so why not apply for another job but within the Kenyan market? So I applied to Coachella. So Coachella was looking for someone to head their channels. So channels meaning basically it's product design, but now for web and mobile, not specific to one platform. So I applied, went for the interview. Plus Coachella was just like literally in my backyard of where I used to live. So I remember when I got the acceptance, I was like, okay, so I'll actually be walking to work. And I remember it used to be exactly 8 minutes from the house to the office. So I joined Coachella. Essentially, it was more or less like a startup, but they were doing consultancy for different organizations. So with them, I got to learn way more about products and now ventured into fintech. So that is where I essentially my journey with fintech started. So we built for KCB, we built for Vuma, Housing Finance, National Bank. So I dealt with all these products and I was the one who was essentially, so they give you like a PRD. So they give you this in the PRDs, this is what needs to be done. Then now Scott, since you're the creative or the product designer, give us a design that these consumers will use. So the designs you're looking at currently for some of these apps like KCB, Equity Merchant, it's Scott who did them.
Wow. Okay. Round of applause. Now, Scott, there's UX, UI designers who are listening to you and thinking, I can get one job, like you have two, like what do you think there was luck with you getting that job? Do you think then the atmosphere was different where now we have so many people getting into UX, UI? What do you think is different with this person's situation where they have a portfolio, they've built great designs?
Well, good question. So what I'd say, the market is definitely way different. Right now the market is way competitive. Considering that people are able to get hands-on skills online just from doing different courses. Now with the introduction of AI and integration of AI to different projects, people can play around with different tools and still get the same outcome. Back then, many people hadn't really embraced it, especially in the Kenyan market. People would rather prioritize functionality over what the product essentially would look like. But now with now people moving to the digital spaces, especially after COVID, or rather as a ripple effect of COVID, then people started embracing digital products and spaces. So it's essentially what Build or called for more product designers to now come to the market, because now people are now moving from the traditional ways of communication or interacting with their consumers and now moving into digital platforms. The reason being, people have more access to mobile phones, internet, laptops, and so on. So they were forced to move to that space. Yeah, so at the time when I was doing those applications, rather applying for these jobs, I wouldn't really say it was luck. I think it was more or less like positioning yourself strategically. Because remember, during COVID, you've seen, okay, now you can't interact with people. So a certain app has come up, another one has come up. So you're like, okay, these are things which are in line with what I want to do or what I'm pursuing. So why not specialize further so that if an opportunity arises, then I'll probably be at the forefront.
Okay. So what would you tell her who is now in a market that's quite competitive? What advice would you give to her or him listening?
Interesting. So what I'll tell them, collaborate. Collaboration is key, and I've seen it do magic and wonders. So with collaboration, essentially it means you're able to gain more from someone who not necessarily might be better than you, but might also be trying to learn from you. So you have an idea, I have an idea. If we work together, then we'll have something better. So you have your portfolio, which you think is great, or rather has been rejected, because I know because people keep on applying and they find probably feel a portfolio is not sufficient. Why not run a project with someone or sit down work on a collaborative portfolio with someone, then now have it presented to probably an organization. Because you see, with portfolios essentially in product design, they're looking for that measure to see, one, if you're able to be like a team player. So essentially, it still comes back to collaborating. So if you show that you're like a muscle puzzle that you can do product end to end, then it means that there's something lacking. So they look at very minor things. So you can say I did a project with Fian. So I did probably the research bit and probably the wireframes. Then Fian did the strategy and probably the user interface. So it shows that collaborative effect, and now it gives you more points to show that you can actually build better if you were to have probably a team working with, or even if you were to do it alone, because then they understand, rather the recruiters understand that, I mean, you cannot do all this alone. You cannot be good at everything. Yeah, hence now why we have the different spheres now, even within product design. You'll find people doing UX strategy, UX research. There are people who do user interfaces. Yeah.
Okay. Still speaking to her, you mentioned, I know everyone is talking about this AI, and everyone has the fear of it taking jobs, etc. But how should she like approach AI given she's learning product design? She's struggling to find that job. How should she leverage or approach AI?
Interesting. How they can approach AI, think of it as an assistant, right? Something or a tool that has been brought, or rather you can use it to leverage for you to be able to want to work more efficiently, which means you can be able to work faster, as opposed to going to rather sit down hours trying to sketch something. Give it the prompt, it gives you an idea. Then now from there, considering that you need to still have a human aspect, because at the end of the day, you're building for consumers who are real human beings. So it gives you the draft, gives you an idea, but now use that to leverage to make you work faster. So what can I add to make this better based on what either you're visualizing or what the business is visualizing? Because at the end of the day, even when you're building this product, whether you're using AI or yourself, there's still two factors to it: the consumer and the business needs. So they all need to marry at one point. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I like to ask this question because after now the money where it tipped, what then was your biggest challenge? Because before it was the money, yeah. Now what at this point, what was your most challenging moment?
So the most challenging moment or thing now with more money is now how to manage that money. Because I like to say, like, money is a spirit, right? So
Spirit.
yes, money is a spirit,
Interesting.
meaning you can control it or you can let it control you. And
You can
if you,
call it.
yeah, like literally you can control it or it can control you.
I mean, call it.
Yeah, you can call it like literally. It's like the same way if you have a pet and you've trained it. If you call them, they know this is my name, so they'll respond to it. Yeah. So the biggest challenge then after was like how to manage this money. Because see, then now you're thinking, or the scope of thinking becomes wide. Like, what other project can I be able to do which is outside work? Do you want to build? Do you want to buy cars? You know, then now you feel, or rather, that's now when people dive deeper into passion. So if people have passion for cars, you'll find someone probably building cars or buying cars. Find someone who probably wants to settle, they've gone bought a farm somewhere, probably done construction. So managing it in the different ways. But then for me, personally, what I'll say is that was the challenge just by thinking about it. But over a period of time, and of course, having older siblings able to see, okay, you can make X amount of money, but you don't have to do all these things at the same time. You do planning essentially, plan for it, plan for any inconveniences that might arise. Remember, earlier said, before that, the challenge was the insurance, the rent. So now that you have all this money, are you looking to probably pay your rent like 6 months forward, and so that you think about other things, or probably use that money to do many other things that you can do on the side. Yeah.
Now, I know that men are conditioned to tie their self-worth around being able to provide and, have money. Did that change have a change on your sense of self or your self-worth? Moving from 60 to like,
Ideally, not really. Reason why, or other reason being, is because, of course, of the people I had around me. the friends I had at that time, some were like who still maintain their friendship, and as I said, sorry, having parents who you're looking up to and siblings, you're able to see how that like money is a part on how you relate to these people, rather how they relate to you. So it didn't really have a major effect, of course, in terms of now self-worth. Of course, you feel like you can be able to do many other things probably to support people or projects outside the scope of work, but it didn't really have like a major effect personally here.
Okay.
With
Um, then I think as we wind up, I'd like you to speak to the younger product designer. And what three things would you tell them to focus on, like to be their compass as they're building their career?
Interesting. I think I'd say for anyone who's building their career, one, try and specialize on one thing that you basically you're really good at. I think what I've seen majorly is as a challenge that most young probably techies are rather experiencing is jumping from one sphere to another, trying to look like for positioning. I think you'll find someone you hear today that okay, being a developer you get X amount of money, so it's high paying. You'll find someone that's decided to become a dev. If you hear next week being a prompt engineer is the highest paying job, you'll find someone jumping there. So you see, at the end of the day, you'll have bits of knowledge in all these spheres, but you're not really good at one particular thing. So specialize and become really good at that thing. Then two, again, I'll still emphasize on collaboration. Collaborate with people. Put your projects out there. Sit down with people. Join sessions. Nowadays, there's so many sessions. You'll see of Twitter Spaces. People having meetups over the weekend. Like there are very many communities where you can be able to interact with people. Of course, it doesn't work for everyone, considering people have different personalities and personality types. So find what works for you. If it's joining that community where you have to do it physically, go for it. If it's joining tech spaces, go for it. If it's having to reach out to someone either through the many platforms that you have, go for it. Then lastly, now I'll speak to it from a product perspective. Empathy. Empathy is everything. Whether you're doing design or programming, just empathize. At the end of the day, with empathy, now you find that you're building your soft skills. So soft skills basically being how you're able to interact with people, how you're able to handle people. With that, now people feel more warm, rather warm up to you. So it's easier for you to interact with them, approach them. If you're looking for probably a gig, don't just go to someone's LinkedIn or DM, say, XYZ, I've heard you're hiring for a role. I am interested. Approach it in a different way. Ideally, how I've done it before, because I've interacted with people on LinkedIn. Just find out what they're doing basically with their personal life. It doesn't have to be very intrusive, but use a different approach. Because now imagine there are 700 or 1,000 other people who have DM'd them saying they're looking for a job. But you've just decided to check up on them and see how work is for them. They're human and they have emotions. So they'll just ease up and it becomes easier for them now to converse with you.
Okay. So specialization, collaborate, and empathy. On specialization, what would a product designer specialize in? Is it domain specialization or?
There are a number of things actually. Apart from domain, because now that spheres or rather morphs into now what people do in terms of leadership and now strategy. But there's so many things people can specialize in when it comes to product. It doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be UI or how the interface looks like or UX. There's so many other things that people can specialize in. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, John. If you met younger John today on your way back home, what would you tell him?
You're putting me on the spot. What should I tell you? I didn't just tell him like, again, take life easy in strides as it comes, one day at a time. Because I feel like the current John and how he experienced life was like, you really have to do one thing at a certain time and it has to turn out in a certain way. But with then, as life continues to progress, you find that you will not essentially be successful at everything that you do. There are places where you'll drop the ball and you need to learn. So it's more or less like a learning curve. And in product design, we call it iteration. So you'll do one thing, something happens, then you go back. So I like to say again that life happens in patterns until you learn. So things will continue to happen to you at different times in different ways, but it will still have the same effect until you're able to learn and do it differently.
Final word for the techies.
Final word for the techies: take life slow, take life easy, one day at a time, and yeah, let's collaborate. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And today he actually brought us flowers. He's the first guest to bring us flowers. So thank you so much. Should we bring them up? Yeah. Thank you as well.